Hello students, this lecture is about the membranes of the bones. And the membranes, they're a covering that cover both the interior and outer parts of the bone. We'll be talking about initially the periosteum, and we'll also be talking about the endosteum. The periosteum is this outermost layer. It covers the outermost part of the bone. It is secured to the bone by something called Sharpie's fibers. These are collagen-like fibers that secure the bone membrane to the actual bone. And here, right here, when we talk about the bone membranes, I'm going to initially introduce the cells of the bone cells. Keep in mind that bone is a living tissue, and to make it alive, to kind of keep it going, we have bone cells. And there are three kinds that we'll talk about. There's actually four kinds, but we'll introduce three here. There are osteoblasts, and osteoblasts, they are bone-forming cells. They create the bone. They build the bone matrix. And if you remember from our discussion on connective tissue, bone is a connective tissue, and it's composed of cells. It's composed of fibers. And in the case of bone, those will be collagen-like fibers. And then it's composed also of an extracellular matrix, a ground substance. In this case, in bone, that ground substance, that bone matrix, will be hardened by the minerals calcium and phosphorus. And the osteoblasts, they build that bone matrix. And they produce the fibers and they build the bone matrix. On the flip side of that, the opposite of the side of that, we have osteoclasts. We have bone-destroying cells. We have bone cells that will break down the bone. And these osteoblasts and osteoclasts, they work together. They'll work together in bone growth. They'll work together in bone remodeling, where we shape the bones. They'll be involved in bone repair. And they're ultimately involved in controlling the level of calcium in the bone versus the level of calcium in the blood. If you remember, bones store calcium, but calcium is also needed for other tissues. Both our muscular and nervous system depend upon calcium. And so these osteoblasts and osteoclasts ultimately will find they're controlled by hormones, and they'll be involved in controlling the calcium in your bones versus calcium in your blood. And then the stem cell from which these osteoblasts and osteoclasts are derived are the osteogenic cells, and we'll talk about them as well when we get into bone growth and development. Notice also in the bone we have nerve fibers, we have blood vessels and lymphatic vessels that will enter the bone to provide nutrients and remove waste. Now on the interior of the bone we also have the endosteum, and this endosteum also contains the osteoblast and osteoclast as well. So here we take a look at it. Here again, we've got a cutaway view of the aphysis, the shaft of the long bone. Notice it's primarily formed of compact bone. We'll talk about these little units soon, but there are small units called osteons that form that compact bone. In the center of the bone, here is the bone marrow. This is where white and red blood cells are produced. On the interior of the bone, in between the bone and the bone marrow, is the endosteum, and osteoblasts and osteoclasts are concentrated there. And then here on the outside, here's the periosteum. Here's the outermost bone membrane. Notice that here are the Sharpie fibers. These are collagen-like fibers that are connecting the bone membrane to the bone. And then here is an artery that's working its way in and feeding the bone with nutrients and waste and removing waste. Thank you.